there's, some creative ways and methods of doing succession planning. I think we counted one time that there's probably 21 different ways to pass a business. And you're not going to use all of them. And this is why, succession planning needs someone like Rob and Allison and myself to bring these pieces together. But, in your time of doing things, what were some of the creative ways that you saw somebody utilize just the passing, the asset itself? What were some of the ways that you would say were pretty creative?
Well, we always like to look for opportunities to reduce estate tax and be creative in that regard. So there's a technical creativity that, I can get really nerdy on. It's really neat to try, and I love puzzles, and I love how can we slice and dice this a little differently to work for what you have going on. And one family, and this is something I'm hearing more and more of. One family was struggling with the idea of their two children breaking the estate evenly between the two, because the third generation was so disproportionate. You had one on this side and five on this side. And they're like, we don't want one grandchild to win the lottery and the other five to wonder why they weren't treated the same. So we approached it and started with the third generation. And in this family, that was an option. It's not for everybody, but I loved the care and concern of the grandmother. And I loved working with them to find something that felt really good and was really respectful of how she wanted them to think of her. And so that was something that was unique, but I've since had like 3 other people ask something along those lines. So maybe it's the new trend, as we have so many different families and numbers are so different. But I loved that she spoke up and shared what she wanted to be remembered for and how she wanted her children to feel when they thought of them. And that drove a lot of the planning.
Back to the people side of things.
Indeed.
All right, Rob, anything come to mind?
Yeah, just very quickly, a client of mine, they're a little over 70 years in business. The second generation are two cousins, and they realized that very early on in their career that they needed a more robust succession plan. So when their children were probably around high school age, they developed a criteria, a checklist, so to speak, of what the next generation, if you want to come in to the business, what qualifies you to come into the business? That's kind of a best practice. But they went a step further and said, now, if you want to become a candidate into one of our executive leadership roles, what's the criteria? Then they took it a step further and said, now, if you want to replace one of us, if you want to be considered in the ultimate succession, understand you're going to be competing with your cousins and with external candidates. They said that from the very beginning, and they repeated it. They dripped on it and dripped on it and dripped on it. And they had that criteria. And we are now, I don't know, probably they're 15 years into it. And it has just, it has just been marvelous. And this is a big company, thousands of employees, and they've just done a great job. And the second generation patriarchs, they actually declared the date that they were going to retire. So they made it mandatory on themselves a decade forward of when their compulsory retirement date would be. Wasn't easier for them. In fact, I had one of the second generations come speak about the difficulty of transitioning. But that to me was very unique. That's very long thinking, and I just believe if everybody could do that, start thinking in increments of decades, start talking to family members as early as possible, and always never say never, and be open to all possibilities.
Great.